Good evening, fellow Ambazonians. Greetings to you all, the beautiful, the brave, and the resilient people of Ambazonia. And hello to all friends of Ambazonia. We're in a new week. There are major international developments that are shaping the world we live in. Some of you may understand them. Some of you may not. Some of you are asking questions like, is this the end? Others are asking other questions like, what if this is a new beginning? The world is changing. And change is the only constant. It's the only thing that is constant and consistent in the world. The centers of powers are changing. Global leadership is changing. Policies are changing. Foreign policy doctrines are also changing. The attitude of states towards one another are changing. Alliances that have existed for decades, that have sustained the current model of the world today, are no longer relevant to create the conditions of the world that we need today. So even those alliances, their priorities are also shifting. Mr. Trump's election is ushering in a global political revolution across the globe, or a revolution across the globe, not only in the United States. It's affecting Canada, it's affecting Mexico, it's affecting China, it's affecting the European Union, it's affecting everything and everyone around the world. And it's going to shape to a greater extent how states behave and act. Today, Mr. Trump's tariffs on Canada and Mexico have gone into effect. That is triggering a regional trade war. And this is just the beginning. These things are negotiable. These rhetorics are meant to get states to act a certain way, for Mr. Trump to achieve certain political and economic objective for the people of the United States. So there is a strategy behind his behavior. You may not like him. All I'm asking you is study the patterns, study the strategy. He's using a strategy called the confusion strategy. That's what he's using towards the European, and that's why on a daily basis, they are jittery. He's moving them from one policy, one strategy to the next, while he's pushing in and working on his own strategic objective to achieve peace in Ukraine. Last night was a press conference held in the White House. He said, anyone that becomes an obstacle to peace must leave. If you're a president and you've become an obstacle to his peace process, your days are numbered. He wants to secure peace. He wants to achieve peace. That's what he worked on. That's what he campaigned on. So if he wants to bring peace to the world. If he wants to reconcile the relationship between the United States and Russia to bring peace and stability in that area of the world and to create more economic opportunities between the people of Russia, the people of the United States, and the people of Europe. And if you want to become an obstacle, your days are numbered. Peace is what he wants. Peace in the Middle East is what he wants. And Mr. Trump will use the might of the United States to secure and achieve peace, in Europe and also peace in the Middle East. Fellow Ambazonians, you, the Ambazonian people, you've achieved your strategic objectives. The strategic objectives the leader laid out have been achieved. The Ambazonian people have strategically defeated Cameroon. What's next? That's what we should be working for. Wars are not meant to be permanent events. All wars are meant to achieve strategic objectives. Mr. Biya's war on the Ambazonian people is meant to achieve strategic objectives for Cameroon. Ambazonian war, the Ambazonian resistance, the armed resistance is also meant to achieve certain political objectives for the Ambazonian people. You've never had political power before. You've never had the ability to go on a negotiating table with strength. You've never had any leverage for negotiation, for peace talks. That's why they've never taken you serious. So he's a wise man. He's a smart man. We have to change the trajectory. We have to create new models that will give our people the kind of strength and power and dominance and prepare them for negotiation to get what belongs to them. Before we get into these discussions, there's a lot more happening within the continent of Europe. European politicians that have been very reluctant to talk about peace and negotiation between Ambazonia and Cameroon. They are all changing their stance, they are changing their position, they are changing their tone. There is a momentum building for peace, for negotiation between Ambazonia and Cameroon. And today, I want to give you an update. But before we get into all of this, though, let's watch some few events that have been developing within the context of Cameroon and how Mr. Biya's government has become very irrelevant. The people do not want them anymore. It's a video that came out from Belgium over the weekend. There is a book out there that Mr. Biya is using to launch his political re-election campaign for this 2025. So he's sending out a couple of deputies to go out and promote Mr. Biya's bid for re-election. So there's this book, they're talking about the achievement of Mr. Biya, the goals, the extraordinary things that Mr. Biya has achieved. And Cameroonians are not buying that because it doesn't match with their daily realities. They know after 42 years, the only thing Mr. Biya has given the people of Cameroon is misery, pain, terror, corruption, embezzlement, bribery, ungovernability, right? Poverty, right? Underdevelopment. So the people understand these realities. So the illusion of rebranding Mr. Biya, it's not taking roots. So there is a clash between Mr. Biya and the people of Cameroon. And this is just the tipping point. This is just the beginning. Let's watch the video that emerged from Belgium from Brussels over the weekend.
Il n'y a rien ici. Il n'y a rien ici. Il n'y a rien ici. Il n'y a rien. Il n'y a rien. Il n'y a rien. Allez faire ça au Cameroun. Allez. Allez faire ça au Cameroun. Allez faire ça au Cameroun. Il n'y a rien. Allez faire ça au Cameroun. Allez faire ça au Cameroun. Les enfants meurent au Cameroun, vous faites quoi ici? Les enfants meurent au Cameroun, vous faites quoi ici? Vous faites quoi ici? Les enfants meurent au Cameroun. Fichez-nous le camp. Fichez le camp. Sortez! 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 Le Cameroun va changer! Le Cameroun va changer! Sortez! 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 Le Cameroun va changer! Le Cameroun va changer! Sortez! Sortez!
All right.
Sortez! Le Cameroun va changer!
That is giving you a perspective of what's going on. The people that are carrying out this anti-bias action are members of the MRC, the party of Mr. Maurice Kamto. So they have a radical branch called the Brigade Anti-Sardinat, called BAS. These are Cameroon political activists that want immediate, urgent change now. And they believe Mr. Biya must go. So for them, as much as it's a peaceful protest, when it comes to Mr. Biya, it's not that peaceful, all right? So those are officials of the Cameroon government in Belgium paying a price. The Cameroonian people do not want Mr. Biya anymore. They are asking Mr. Biya to go in peace, but since he doesn't want to go in peace, then there is bound to be violence. That was a delegation of the Cameroon Ministry of Youth and Social Services. Now, also in Belgium over the weekend, the Cameroon Minister of Employment and Trade, the Cameroon Minister of Employment and Social Vocation, Mr. Issa Chiroma, was also in Belgium. To do what? To promote Mr. Biya as a candidate for the 2025 presidential elections. So they're on a book tour to sell to the Cameroonese diaspora community why they should re-elect Mr. Biya, who has been in power for 42 years, why they should give him a new mandate of 7 years. Mr. Biya is now 92 years old. So in the next 7 years, Mr. Biya will be 99 years old. All right? If at 92, he can walk, he can function, he can perform. All right? He's going through natural degeneration. If at 92, he can govern, we don't see him in the public anymore, except on very rare occasions. Right? So how will he be able to lead the people of Cameroon when he's 93? When he's 94, when he's 95, when he's 96, 97, 98, and 99. Okay? Now you're talking about dealing with the gods, as I told all of you last week. So things are about to change in Cameroon, as we've announced. Even the international community, including the DW and Al Jazeera, they've all told you the regime is falling apart. It's a political vacuum that is being created. And all factions within the CPDM party are preparing themselves to fight each other to gain access to state resources. Issa Chiroma is also playing the gallery game. He was in Belgium to promote Mr. Biya. But remember, he's also preparing to be one of those fighting for power in Cameroon. Watch how the BAS, the Brigade Anti-Sardinat of MRC, how they dealt with Issa Chiroma. The humiliation. There is no breathing space for Mr. Biya and his deputies, whether it's in Cameroon or across the globe. Time for change is now. Let's watch, let's listen, let's learn the movement for change and the desire for change, how strong it is in Cameroon. Lessons from Issa Chiroma. Le peuple camerounais veut le changement. Nous voulons le changement. Nous voulons le changement. Pour bien doit partir. Mr. Issa Chiroma received what they call kum kum. Kum kum everywhere. Ta 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 ta. All right? So, this is just the beginning of the change, the desire for change. The people of Cameroon are fed up. They've seen change happening across the globe. Nations are thriving, nations are developing, there is prosperity across the globe. All right? There's great change taking place across the globe. So the people of Cameroon should not be taken hostage by Mr. Biya and his henchmen. So they want change. And 2025 is that tipping point for Cameroon. That's what's taking place in Cameroon. We'll get back to this. All right. Now let's get back to Ambazonia. The Europeans have been very reluctant to interfere in what they consider to be France's sphere of influence, and that's the conflict in Ambazonia. So Europe has been taking a very reluctant stance. They are afraid. They don't want to rub feathers with Mr. Macron and the French colonial empire. So they said, okay, France, we'll let you deal with it. And obviously, you know the history of France. You know the history of Europe. Let me remind you, the European white supremacist, the European imperialist, have killed more people across the globe than any other race. The European supremacist and colonialist and imperialist have killed more people across the globe than any other race. At one point, they believed they owned the world. At one point, they believed they own other races, from Africa to Southeast Asia. They never considered others to be human. These are historical facts. They still control how they see themselves and how they see the rest of the world. The French policy to make the French language the dominant official language in Rwanda is what is the reason they engineered and supervised the Rwandan genocide. As you heard from Dr. Rubin 2 weeks ago. They killed 450 Cameroonese of the Bamileke tribe in the western region of Cameroon. To force the people of Cameroon to accept an illusion of independence. Independence without any substance. Independence without the powers for Cameroon to be independent. So, over the last 8 years, the French have supported Mr. Biya on his genocide on the Ambazonian people. And they didn't want any other European nation to interfere with what they believed is their sphere of influence, the France-Afrique. Let me remind the French and France, the tide is turning. 6 African countries within the last 2 years have vowed never again will France use racial superiority and an imperialist mentality to subjugate, to dominate those people for the exploitation of their natural resources, for the development and progress of France at the detriment of these nations. There is an agreement still out there for all French African countries called France Colonial Pact, where former French colonies are still paying a colonial fee, tax, to France for colonizing them. And there's a video out there, according to that economist, France collect about $500 billion dollars every year, extortion fee from these impoverished African countries. And as a result, there's a new consciousness, there's a new reawakening across Africa to put an end to this exploitation. 6 African countries have cut ties with France. They have kicked the French out. This is just the beginning. So France is losing ground to the Russians, to the Chinese, because they are coming in with new policies, not to dominate, not to exploit, not to marginalize, not to assimilate, but for equality. Let's trade. Let's support one another. Let's build one another. Let's collaborate. Let's cooperate. So the world is changing. New global frontiers are opening. And as a result, we are seeing this significant shift and rapid pace of development, especially what we're witnessing in Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Chad. Look at what the young Mr. Traore is doing in Burkina Faso. Mr. Traore is the reincarnation of Thomas Sankara. He's embodied that nationalist spirit and he's creating miracles in Burkina Faso because they have kicked out the imperialist, the racial supremacist that thought they were gods, that had their boots on the necks of the people of these countries. The loss of that influence is shifting France's focus to shore up Mr. Paul Biya to make sure they don't lose Cameroon. And most of the resources that France benefits from are coming from Ambazonia, for French industries. That's why they've been shoring up Mr. Biya, giving Mr. Biya diplomatic cover, and constantly providing billions and billions and billions and billions of CFA, moving across the Ambazonia territory to be doing political propaganda to shore up Mr. Biya. Mr. Biya has never been to Ambazonia for how many years? For years, he hasn't been to Ambazonia. But you've seen they are sending French ambassador, French ambassador, French ambassador. Well, 2 weeks ago, they brought in the Italian ambassador, took him to where? To Le BLM. Then last week, the French ambassador went to where? To Bamenda. To do what? To shore up Mr. Biya. They are not coming because they love you, the Ambazonian people. They are not coming because they want you to succeed, because they want you to be free. They are coming to entrench the seeds of exploitation, imperialism, colonialism, and continuous genocide. That's why they are there. There is no morality in the policies of this colonial exploitation. There is no feelings. That's why they can slaughter hundreds of thousands and millions. After all, they own the world. What consequences will befall them? They control the world. They created the global institutions. That's why they have created terrorist organizations. They created and are sponsoring terrorist organizations to destabilize these countries. And then they'll turn around, they tell you they want to provide military aid to solve the same problem they created. How does this relate to the Ambazonian conflict? It's all part of the game. Kill them for their resources. Kill as many as you can. Weaken the voices. Anyone that dare to stand up, to talk about it, to speak the truth, is targeted, persecuted, eliminated. Because they own the world. The world they own no longer exists, and many voices. Today, 80 years later, the Ambazonian people have succeeded, going through a lot of pain, bearing the pain of daily massacres, of ethnic cleansing, burning down of villages and communities, burning grandmothers alive, killing pregnant women. We've gone through it all. It's the price as a people we have paid, just like the people of Rwanda, just like the people of many countries across the globe, just like even the people of the United States. They also paid their price for freedom. We fought a great fight, very tactically, a great cost. We've paid with our lives, with our blood. We've paid being refugees, displaced persons, children haven't been to school because their schools have been destroyed to make sure they have no compelling future. Our grandmothers, most families live in the forest, live in their farmhouse, and even in their houses, they are targeted and killed by the colonial bees trained by France to gain access to cheap natural resources. There's no human rights. Human rights is not for people like you. It's for the French. Human rights is for the Norwegians. All right? Human rights, it's if you are white, all right, then you have human rights. That's their concept. They created it. So only they deserve to have human rights. You don't. You speak up, they call you a terrorist. You want to fight for your rights, they said you're causing problems. They fought for theirs. If it was a good thing for the Norwegians to stand up against Hitler conquering Norway, conquering Norway, it should be a good thing for the Ambazonian people to stand up against Cameroon's occupation and colonialism, isn't it? What is good for the children of Norway, what is good for the people of Norway, it's also good for the people of Ambazonia. The election of Mr. Trump is changing Europe's calculation about the conflict. The Ambazonia Governing Council, wisdom, strategic thinking, in building and forming a new partnership with the United States has forced the Europeans to rethink their policy on the conflict between Ambazonia and Cameroon. The Europeans are waking up and noticing how fast Mr. Trump wants peace and a new arrangement between the Russians and the Americans. They are waking up to realize that it's not business as usual. There must be leadership for peace to be achieved. Mr. Trump wants peace. in Ukraine wants the conflict in Ukraine to come to an end. He's showing leadership. The Europeans are afraid that with the pace with which Mr. Trump is moving across the globe, the Americans could step in immediately and take over the control of a peace process. They have the will, they have the knowledge, they have the resources, and they have the power to do so. The fear of A Gulf C partnership with the Americans, with Moran Global Strategies, the lobby firm, is creating fear within Europe. As a result, 2 weeks ago, as we informed the Ambazonian people, the government of Norway sent a delegation to Cameroon, a delegation of diplomats to Cameroon. They are telling Mr. Biya, listen, the way the A Gulf C is moving towards the Americans, we are afraid if you don't negotiate right now, Cameroon will not have a say if a decision is taken by the United States. If you don't negotiate right now, even France will probably not have a say when the United States has made a unilateral decision and declaration recognizing the Ambazonian people. Mr. Biya said, okay, it sounds threatening. What do you want me to do? He said, it's totally up to you. All conflict are resolved by the consequential actors. After their 1 week of assessment, meeting with members, with Mr. Biya, the Prime Minister, and the cabinet, meeting with Anglophone, what they call Anglophone elites or leaders, meeting with the civil society, talking with normal people. They spent 1 week in Cameroon. They came back with a letter to the Ambazonia Governing Council from Mr. Biya. Mr. Biya requesting the Ambazonia Governing Council and the government of Cameroon to get into talks, peace talks. They want these things to be secret. Why? They can't explain themselves. Why do you want them to be underground talks? You want talks, but you are keeping the leader in jail. All right? So we found this to be very hypocritical. And after serious deliberations, the Ambazonia Governing Council understand the liberation belongs to the Ambazonian people and not the Ambazonia Governing Council. The people must have a say. It's the people that are doing the fighting. It's all of us that are doing the fighting. So there must be public consultation with the people. The leader has promised transparency after what we learned from the Swiss intention and Canada pre-talks. The leader has set certain guidelines. Any talks, any intentions of talks must be public. Must be public. In order for the actors to demonstrate public leadership, public credibility, and for the process to have a face. We had these discussions last week. Over the weekend, the French ambassador to Cameroon, Mr. Thierry Marchand, made certain statements that Cameroon and the people of what they call Northwest and Southwest, what they call Anglophones, should be prepared for peace talks. Peace talks are coming. The French, excuse me, please, studio, excuse me for 2 minutes. I'll be right back. If it's possible. All right. The body is recovering from all this winter cold. All right. Norway wants the conflict to come to an end. We, the Ambazonian people, want this conflict to come to an end. France has now joined in. They also want this conflict to come to an end. The European Union has also joined in. They want this conflict to come to an end. So there is momentum that is building up because, as I've explained, because of the powerful lobbying effort the Ambazonia Governing Council is doing, and the partnership we are forming and building within the US Congress, within the US Senate, is mounting pressure on the Europeans. They don't want to be left out. When you see them now talking and wants to act, when you see Norway sending diplomatic team to Cameroon, it is because of the fear of our lobbying effort. So this is good news for the Ambazonian people. All conflicts do eventually come to an end. But how they come to an end is also very important. That's why, while the Ambazonia Governing Council and the Ambazonian people are open for a negotiated settlement, it will not be business as usual. We have achieved significant strategic objectives and have dismantled Cameroon colonial power in Ambazonia. We have demonstrated our determination and resilience to reclaim that which belongs to the Ambazonian people. Whether it's Norway that is going to lead the process, or it's a combined effort with the French, as we are seeing, and a combined effort with the European Union, whatever form or shape Whatever group of nations or institutions or alliances wants to lead the peace process, the Ambazonia Governing Council is open, it's ready. The Ambazonian people are open, and we are ready. It must be genuine, it must be transparent, it must meet international standards. That's all we ask for. No one, no nation, no group of nations would impose a predetermined solution to the Ambazonian people. And the Ambazonian people will not accept anything that reflects Cameroon's predetermined solution, or to try to fix Cameroon's predetermined solution, to modify it. It is a negotiated settlement between the Ambazonian people and Cameroon. Our people should be open to dialogue and to negotiate from a position of strength. And we are in a position of strength. Cameroon is in a position of weakness. Cameroon is in a position of disintegration. We are in a position of strength. So embrace any peace talks that are real, that are credible, that are serious. But the Norwegians and the French must understand consultations must be with our partners in the United States. Everything must be done in concert with our partners. Any peace talk between Ambazonia and Cameroon, whether it's led by the Norwegians and the French or it's led by the European Union, must be done in consultation and in concert with our backers, with our US partners. That's the policy of the Ambazonia Governing Council. There is a video the leader made a couple of years ago, and it relates to what we are talking about and what we are fighting about, or what we are fighting for. Studio, play us that video, please, from the leader.
Ambazonia will be offered to you tomorrow. Will you be ready? Will you be ready for governance? Do you have the institutions and expertise in terms of human capacity and state institutions to transform that space into one where our children can say, we fought a good fight? The reason why we are here is not simply because we want to create an alternative platform or pull our resources together. It's because we reject fraud. I don't know why you fight. I know all of us say we fight for independence, and I always remind you, independence is an abstract political construct. You fight for that abstract political construct, not as an objective. There are the micro issues within that political construct that you fight for. The right as a woman to have equal rights within your own country, to have opportunity in terms of education, to have a good health system that can take care of the weak and the sick, stop a woman dying every minute and giving birth. Those are the real issues we fight for. We fight for transparency. I invite every one of you to reject fraud. Reject it from the depth of your heart, and no matter what the opponent, the violent minority tells you.
All right. The leader reminds all of us what we are fighting for and the meaning of independence. The meaning of independence is to give you your heart's desire. The things that will make your life a lot more easier. Quality education for our children managed by the Ambazonian people, under the Ambazonian people. A legal system that reflects our culture and who we are as a people. governance by the Ambazonian people, responsible, accountable, stable, transparent, forward-thinking government. Institutions that reflect our culture, our customs, our aspirations, our desires. Quality drinking water, good roads, councils and municipalities under the management and control of the Ambazonian people. A parliament whose members are elected by the Ambazonian people. A police force that reflect our culture. Those are the things we fight for. That's what our people want. We want to govern ourselves. We want to shape our own destiny. We want our children to live in peace. We want safe communities where people will be able to dream dreams and shape destinies. Where their hard work can be rewarded. Where their risk, their entrepreneurial risk, industrial risk can be rewarded. Where young men and women can move across our territory without harassment. Where you don't have a colonial military that is out there extorting, raping, and killing our people. We want to be in charge. That's the Ambazonia we are fighting for. And that's what we'll be negotiating for. Canada Pre-Talks has laid out a solid foundation and a framework on which all future negotiations will be built from. No one needs to panic. No one needs to worry. You have achieved your strategic objectives. We have strategically defeated Cameroon, and we've achieved power. You have power now. You are no longer powerless. So don't be afraid of negotiations. Don't be afraid of peace talks. Go in boldly. Don't be afraid of recognition. The good news is Norway cannot decide for you anymore. France cannot decide for you anymore. Cameroon cannot decide for you anymore. They cannot. Only you can decide what's good for Ambazonia, for our children, for our people, and for our nation. So be bold, be a dreamer. The resistance continue while we are open for negotiations and for recognition. All right? This is my message to you all today. Thanks for watching.
I told you before, when the time comes, they will come to us. And I remind you, I know my national security advisor always reminds me I shouldn't utter certain words, but I say them so you don't forget. Because I know they are trying to take me down. But even if I'm not around, don't forget. You don't owe them child support. Don't forget the crimes they've committed against us. We, this generation, will defeat Cameroon in battle. Ambazonia will be offered to you tomorrow. Will you be ready? Will you be ready for governance? Do you have the institutions and expertise in terms of human capacity and state institutions to transform that space into one where our children can say, we fought a good fight? The reason why we are here is not simply because we want to create an alternative platform or pool our resources together. It's because we reject fraud. I don't know why you fight. I know all of us say we fight for independence, and I always remind you, independence is an abstract political construct. You fight for that abstract political construct, not as an objective. There are the micro issues within that political construct that you fight for. The right as a woman to have equal rights within your own country, to have opportunity in terms of education, to have a good health system that can take care of the weak and the sick, stop a woman dying every minute and giving birth. Those are the real issues we fight for. We fight for transparency. I invite every one of you to reject fraud. Reject it from the depth of your heart, and no matter what the opponent, the violent minority tells you.
Welcome to ACN.